The meeting of the Dudley-Charlton Regional School Committee is now in session. It is Wednesday, May 23rd. It's 7 p.m. We're at the Charlton Middle School, and we will all stand to pledge to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Approval of the minutes. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our regular meeting of Wednesday, May 9th.
Second.
Discussion?
I have a couple of corrections.
Okay.
On page 4, third paragraph, it states Mrs. Reed, but it was Mrs. Rabbit. Paragraph 5, it's E. Rabbit, not R. Rabbit. And then if we go down to about halfway where it says Mr. Desto, said several of the vans have people serving as monitors and asked if the cameras would be needed on those vans. We should have a follow-up statement that says, yes, the committee agreed that we should have cameras on the vans.
And anything else? We'll take a vote. All in favor? Motion carries. Elaine? Yeah. It's unanimous. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our executive session on Wednesday, May 9th. Okay, discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Now, did we have executive session minutes from the date before? Remember,
Yes,
we
but
put it on
But
hold?
they were, but
But
it
did
says
we
we
vote
corrected
on
them.
it?
It says we did correct them.
Oh, we did vote, okay. Because we held it in,
Right, because I had a question.
yeah, because you had a question.
We did correct it.
Checking. Citizens Forum this evening, do we have anyone that would like to come to speak with us? Okay. School Spotlight, we have Mason Road this evening, right?
Yep.
Okay,
Here she comes.
here they come.
Marching in.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us here tonight. Our Grade 1 Mighty Mustangs are excited to be here. They have been preparing for Memorial Day show tomorrow night, where we're going to honor all the men and women who have served and are serving in the military branches, and we're just so pleased to be here. So I am going to turn this over to Mrs. Winans, our amazing music teacher at Mason Road School.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening. We are excited to perform here. Thank you for inviting us. And we are getting ready, as Mrs. Parnley said, for our Memorial Day program tomorrow night at 6:30. We'd love to see all of you there. And we're going to sing a couple of selections and say a couple of poems as a sneak preview. The flag goes by.
The flag goes by.
Ready?
Hats off, along the street there comes a blare of bugles, a ruffle of drums, and loyal hearts are beating high. Hats off, the flag is passing by. You're a grand old flag, you're a high-flying flag, and forever in peace may you wave. You're the emblem of the land I love, the home of the free and the brave. Every heart beats true under red, white, and blue, when there's never a boast or a brag. But shall old acquaintance be forgot? Keep your eye on the grand old flag.
contact the music family? Are you going to decide?
Well, the
Do
first thing
something
I'll do, Mrs. Cabral, is I'll talk to Mr. Chaplin, who probably his wheels are spinning already, and knowing him, and maybe he and I can sit down with the music program heads, and perhaps Connie herself even, and
I don't even know if
start
she knows
brainstorming.
this is taking place. Last I heard, she knows nothing about this somehow. I don't know how she does it,
I
but.
think that's a good thing.
That's
Right,
a good
so I
thing.
guess, I don't know if we're keeping it still a secret, or now is it out there? I don't know.
It's out there.
It's out there. We've been talking about it for a month, and she still doesn't
People
know.
enjoy watching that.
So,
So I don't know.
Elaine,
Just as a follow-up, is, one of the things that we haven't talked about is the design of the award. You did the design of the piece, the cost of it, where we absorb that in our budget type of piece should be considered, but I don't know, I don't know how that gets approached, or who's gonna make a decision on what it's gonna look like,
So that's why I
so.
suggested you start the ball rolling.
We will, we'll brainstorm, and
Yeah.
eventually, I would imagine, somebody will bring a proposal to you, which says this is what it'll look like and this is what it'll cost.
and in Webster, they dedicated it to Jackie Poliafico. She was the music teacher of the auditorium. So you could look at that too, because they have a dedication
Okay.
on
Oh, great.
the auditorium.
May I just add an idea? I talked to a couple of the music parents, in confidence, knowing that this was going to be discussed tonight. We have some really talented dads who do a lot of set work for our show choirs, Brian Scanlon and Brian Scheretti. We kind of had in the works an idea, I don't know if you know, but Becky Boussier has recently been awarded a grant for a new grand piano.
Right.
The grand piano that's currently in the auditorium is one that Connie acquired for the district, for Shepherd Hill, I should say, at the beginning of her tenure in the district. So it's quite old and is not able to be repaired anymore. So we were thinking of taking the guts of the piano out, keeping the frame, and maybe putting that on the short wall. If you're looking at the auditorium doors, there's a small wall in between the two sets of doors. And kind of putting that frame maybe on a little bit of not an angle, but a tilt, and maybe putting something inside of the grand piano frame, the shell of it. So we thought that would work.
Like, you mean that's where the sign would be indicating that it's
Yeah,
named?
maybe inside that shell.
That's fancy.
And then
Oh, that's
keeping
nice.
the keyboard intact, because it's kind of, it's old and worn and cool looking, but covering it with like some clear, plexiglass or something, so it's protected and not picked at by kids and people. But, and then maybe putting some kind of a signage inside of there. It was just a thought that we were
That's
talking
pretty
about the other
cool.
night, so.
Plus, we have such a wonderful art department, they could probably help you too, the
Yeah,
art department. So it may not cost much at all, we can do it all in-house.
That's a great idea.
Young
We
gentleman
have
that did
dads
the
that are willing
3D
to help.
thing.
Yeah,
That's not a bad idea, that we could have students do it,
Right,
and I
this
bet
is-
you that would mean more to her.
yeah, and the art department is
And
outstanding
the other thing
too.
I was going to ask is, I would just suggest, and I don't know if if the committee wants me to do it before, Sandy and I do a formal letter indicating that this has taken place, and then maybe call Connie in and just say, give her the letter rather than mail it, or something
Oh, yeah,
like that. But if there's a better way to inform her of this, I'm
I
open
think
for
it should be
suggestions.
like a singing telegram. I think it should be one of the
the
show
kids,
choir
one of the
groups
kids,
sings
yeah.
her.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, that's not a bad idea.
That would
So
be
maybe
fun.
when they have not the singing, but maybe something like that, but when they have
It should be-
practice,
It
With
should be.
balloons
to give her
or
the letter
something.
while they're
Deliver
there,
Couple
while the
music
kids are
balloons or
there.
something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Mr. Postman.
You could invite them all here and her here, and they could somehow do that here.
We could think about doing it at our next
Yeah.
meeting.
Right.
Which is
We
at
should
Shepherd
do
Hill.
it At our next meeting.
Okay, that's it then. We're gonna do it at our next meeting, if that's what you say.
Okay.
Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah,
That would
tell
be
her.
fantastic.
I think that'd be a good job.
Yeah, good luck keeping this one secret,
Yeah.
though,
Yeah.
for 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
What is the date of your next meeting?
June 13th.
The same night as the
There's a
school,
music parents
meeting.
meeting where we're going to approve the budget going into the next year.
What time does that start?
That starts at Becky's house,
6:30.
at, I think there's.
And would Connie be at that meeting?
I know, isn't it?
She may be, I'm not sure. There is well, it's probably really short notice, and I don't know if it would be appropriate, but there's a concert choir festival tomorrow evening, but that's really short notice, and I don't know if she'll be there either.
Yeah.
But it's all the district choruses, so it's 8th grade Dudley Middle, 8th grade Charlton Middle, Shepherd Hill, all the choirs. I think Bartlett's coming as well, in Tantascwa.
That would be really cool.
Yeah, I think that's
but-
too quick to pull together, though. Well, so we could still invite her to our next meeting despite the music parents meeting, right? And just, I don't think it's gonna hold out that long, though. Maybe we should do the thing with the, where we,
I know our group would want to.
Every heart beats true under red, white, and blue, where there's never a boast or a brag. But should old acquaintance be forgot, keep your eye on the grand old flag.
Our next song, excuse me while I stand up, is a collaboration between Mrs. Parmalee and I. We're very fortunate that Mrs. Parmalee is fluent in American Sign Language, and so she worked with the children to teach them American Sign Language, and I worked with them to teach them the song. So it's a lovely collaboration between my principal and myself.
Our heroes. Today we will honor all brave men and true who fought to protect us, to guard me and you. And freedom worth having to keep us secure takes a wide-awake heart and a hand that is sure. And a humble remembrance of
quickly introduce ourselves. We probably should have done that at the beginning. I'm sorry. Can you start? Say your name.
I'm Colin Starcheski.
Okay.
I'm Georgia Neforce Ortiz. And my name is I'm Amelia Quartermash. Charlotte Quartermash.
Be present at that, the music parents would want to be present when you did that.
How about this? We'll brainstorm tomorrow,
Yeah.
or in the next, within the
Right.
next couple of days, and then we'll come up with a plan,
Right,
because we're not gonna
that's
think of it
figure it
tonight.
out.
If it's at the next meeting, I'm sure I could contact people and we could make adjustments.
Yeah,
If that's
change the date.
the ultimate decision, we'll bend for Connie.
Okay.
Okay. Now, next on the agenda is superintendent's hiring process update, and that's Joe.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Coin. The search committee has met on 2 occasions so far, and very productive meetings. We had a list of 24 candidates, and we were able to get that down to 4 to bring in for a first round of interviews. And I'm going to use the term interviews more like a screening. I know the school committee, the full school committee actually conducts the formal interview. But we are going to, on June 5th, we're going to bring in 2 candidates, and June 6th, we'll bring in 2 other candidates for questioning. It's our plan right now to have names forwarded to the full committee for a special meeting on June 11th. That's the goal, is to be able to provide candidates to the full committee on June 11th. In addition, tonight we discussed everything from, lines of questioning for the candidates, and I thought it was feel free to chime in, Elaine or Stephanie, if you want. I thought it was a good working meeting, both meetings. I think we got a lot done in the 2 meetings that we've had, and we're looking forward to moving toward June 5th and 6th and bringing people in and talking with them face to face. Do you guys have anything you wanted to?
No, the only clarification that I would make is that the candidates they move forth would be the public interviewing of the full school committee, just so that we're giving that advance notice.
Right.
That it's not a, the first round of screenings is confidential. We'll be going into executive session for that.
Correct.
But the full committee interview process is a public meeting.
June.
Yes.
Okay.
My only question, are we going to decide that night on June 11th? Will we vote that night, or will we wait till the next meeting?
The schedule was determined because we then meet on the 13th, so that would be the full committee debate on
Okay.
the 11th and making a selection at the meeting on the 13th.
13th, yeah.
My only question is, the newest member of Dudley will not be elected till June 11th at 8 o'clock. So that person will not be involved unless the people that are running come and listen. They are not involved, they will not be involved in the interviews at all then. So I don't know if they probably shouldn't even vote. So that's kind of sticky, that date. There's any way we
Well-
can push up the date or anything, so
No.
Mr. Peterzak will still be on the committee?
I mean,
I
Doesn't
think
it
we
make-
should have Joe still on the committee.
Well, he's on the committee for the search, but I
No,
need to
I'm
vote.
talking
You have
about
to
our
vote.
committee,
Right.
the school committee, so he can vote, because the new person, like you said, is not.
I don't know if we can
It's too tight.
meet that
I
time
think
frame,
with the
Mrs. Cabela.
schedule, in
It's
trying
tight.
to look at it, and, we have, the last week of May, we couldn't act on because of graduation activities. So we tried to move as quickly as possible, so we're taking we're interviewing on Tuesday and Wednesday to even have candidates to be able to come back, for us to be able to do, reference
Okay.
checking or that.
So can we that evening, we're going to interview 2 candidates. Can't we discuss it after they leave and see if we can come to?
On the 11th, you mean?
On the 11th, and see if we can come to a decision?
Am I?
You're off at 8 o'clock. That's when the election
Isn't it
ends.
Tuesday the 12th?
No, it's the 11th. We
No,
vote on
it's Monday,
Mondays.
the 11th.
So at 8 o'clock, you would not be able to vote. If you pushed up the interviews on
That's what I was
Monday,
gonna
like
say.
at
Can you
3 or
push it up?
something, and then take an actual vote that night, that's the only way you'd be able to squeeze it in.
I'm not committed to the time frame.
Yeah.
We're more
Right.
committed to the date.
Why don't
The
you
date,
do it
the
that way?
date.
Because if we've got 2 we either going to like one or we're not going to like either one. So we'll have to continue if we can't come to an agreement. But once we interview them, can't we decide that evening?
Sure.
I think
If we make it a
can.
public
I think
meeting
that
and
makes more
put that in,
sense.
we have to have
And
an
I think
agenda.
I think it makes more
Right.
sense for Mr. Petrus
I
to
do
be
too.
involved.
Yeah.
So maybe if you could push up the time so that
So
we're
the
done.
interview.
right now, we're down for 5:30,
Right.
it looks like.
Yeah,
So if we started, could I suggest that we start at 4 and then we do the second interview at 5:30? And then we'd be able to do,
Madeline Audette, Kayla Sibbert, Julian Brockwhite, Erin Garza, Elizabeth Hayes.
Nice job. Thank you so much.
That was a sweet performance. And we would like more.
Come on back tomorrow night.
Thank you all very much for coming out. We appreciate it. I know it's a beautiful Wednesday. Celtics are on tonight. We appreciate you coming. Thank you so much. You're always welcome to stay, but we also understand if you have to go. I always cry at those concerts, or I have to hold it in.
That was so good. I was crying.
Thank you, too.
She had grandnieces.
Yes.
They weren't here for my last meeting. Everybody's gone.
That knocked you down a peg.
Show choir's in good shape going forward.
Yes.
Are you recruiting them younger and younger now? What's the deal? Yeah.
They were good, the little kids.
They were allowed and you have a first
Yeah.
grade. So composed first grade. I have a first grader. He would not have been composed.
All right.
He'd surprise you.
They come up, they rise to the occasion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, next on the agenda is communications.
Take 'em home.
Mr. Dester.
I do have one tonight, Mrs. O'Coin, that I want to share, not so much the communication, but the spirit of it, and ask for a little bit of guidance from the school committee. I was, if you'll recall, 2 meetings ago, two Shepherd Hill meetings ago, Mrs. Lisa Tinsley spoke under Citizens Forum about MCAS opt-outs and very passionate about the issue. If you recall that night, I said that I would get in touch with her the next day, and I told her that I would respond to her complaint in writing, which I did. The long and the short of it is that as part of my communication with Mrs. Tinsley, I put 4 steps into motion that I've shared with the principals that I want to happen anytime there would be somebody who wants to opt out of MCAS. I'll give you a good idea of what they are. We would ask that all parents inform the school at least a week in advance, and they've always done that more than a week in advance, but at least a week in advance in writing of their intention to have their children not participate, so the school could start making plans for supervision and so forth. Once the school receives that advance notice of any parent's request not to have the student participate, we as a school will not speak to the student about it or question the student about it, okay? Because we don't want to put them on the spot, they're kids, you know. Third, and this is at the recommendation of the DESE, but also because we just simply don't have enough supervision to have, like, literally every hand is on deck for MCAS, you know. So any student who has parental permission not to participate will have to remain in the testing area, in the classroom with their classmates, but will be allowed to read a book of his or her choosing no more than 15 minutes into the testing window. And finally, once a first-time request is received by the principal, we're asking the principal or his or her designee to contact that parent to discuss the issue with them and make sure that they understand all the peripheral things that go along with that decision. So apparently, Mrs. Tinsley was okay with that. However, she reached out to me afterward and asked if, with my departure imminent, if the school committee would want to set this as a procedure or as a policy so that it would be guaranteed to be enforced next year. Now, I can tell you, truthfully, it's going to, the principals were happy for the guidance and are going to, gladly follow it. So I'm not worried about that, but she is, and I just wanted to be sure that I brought that to your attention, and I will proceed in any way that you want me to.
The only part of that may be disruptive is if the kid next to me is reading a book and I'm trying to do the test, is that going to make me not want to do the test myself?
It's certainly not beyond the realm of possibility with kids.
That's the only thing how
but-
could you address that, though?
Well, the kids are spread out pretty good in the classroom, and so far that hasn't been an issue. This has occurred, we've used this already this year because we had to do something, and that hasn't been an issue whatsoever so far, but you're right, it could.
Well, now they've been making it public, more parents might opt out. We might have half the class opting out.
Debate and,
Are we only going to interview 2 finalists? Is that?
well, there's a possibility that we didn't put a parameter on it.
Yeah.
There could be 3.
3 maximum?
Three maximum. Our
really-
preliminary screening, we allotted an hour and 15 minutes, and without having a specific memory, I know that what we budgeted for time 4 years ago, we ended up with an excess of time. Our interviews
We
went
did.
much
Yeah,
faster.
right, they did.
So, you could probably schedule in an hour and 15-minute intervals for this. And even if you started at 3:30, you could do 3:30, 4:45, 6 o'clock, we're done, and we have an opportunity to debate. But the problem with it is that, once you go through the final interviews, it's not really giving any reflective time for people to sit
No.
and think and maybe do some further research and ask some questions. I still think I think you'd be able to contribute what your opinion would be prior to the conclusion of that night, but I think the actual vote,
I think we actually voted when we hired Mr. Desto that evening.
We did.
No, we didn't. We went to,
No, we
we had a
didn't.
regular school
Oh,
committee on a
okay.
regular
I
Wednesday.
thought we-
I thought
No.
we did that
No, we
evening.
didn't.
No.
I trust Catherine's.
It was at a regular
Yes,
meeting.
Mrs. Zucker.
I don't know why, I remember
It was here, but we
interviewing and then I
voted the
thought.
Wednesday,
We
because we
voted
just,
on it.
we thought about it over the weekend, so to speak.
right.
So,
If I may I add some input? I just, when I hire people, and I'm not hiring superintendents, I'm hiring, district office principals, and even back when I hired teachers, I always needed time to think about it. Maybe I beat things to death too much and I overthink, but I do think that you need some reflective time. I think to be able to finish interviews at 6 o'clock and then that same night have the deliberation completed by 7:45, I think that's a tall order. My advice would be, the 2 choices that I would suggest would be you interview on the 11th and then vote on the 13th as scheduled. And that, Joe could certainly have very strong input on the night of the interviews. And maybe the new member would have to just abstain and we'd have to hope it wasn't a 3-3 vote.
that's another problem.
Or you would have to move the interviews up to the 7th or 8th and then do the deliberating on the 11th while Joe is still with us. But I think that there definitely would be really hard to do it all the same night. Just my opinion.
We
How do you
can't
feel?
move the
Mr.
special
You're
meeting.
the chair, what do you think?
I think I would have to agree with you, Mr. Desto, in terms of, the more I'm thinking of it, and you too, Mrs. Rabbit, to make the decision all in that night, I guess, is a tall order.
Now,
I don't-
Wednesday is, you've got Wednesday, June 6th,
Correct,
right?
correct.
And those are going to be the interviews?
Yes, this search committee
Okay.
interviews, yes.
So why do we have to wait, though, until Monday? We still have.
There was some scheduling unavailability for the 7th, and then the reality of asking people to come, if you're interviewing somebody on a Wednesday night, to come back for final interview on Thursday. I mean, as much as we want to reflect, I think we also want those people to reflect on what they might have been asked and
Yeah,
want to be
you're
able to
right.
present.
That's true.
And the next thing, so, I understand everybody's sense of urgency, we all have that sense of urgency to do it, but I think, I agree with Mr. Desto on wanting some time to reflect and think, and I was very impressed with everybody that participated today, including our student rep Cameron, who
That was great.
had spent, the time period researching candidates and Googling and looking at videos and watching. And
Good. Great
I mean,
job.
he really had some excellent
best.
points. So, yeah, it was just, I think it's important. So the three of us will have been through the preliminary process, but for the rest of the committee, you might, for first look at somebody, want to yourself be able to do some follow-up things on what you want to look at the day after, so.
Right, I
ask a
think Ray
procedural
wanted
Just
to
an
say
idea,
something.
could you not invite the two candidates to come and observe the meeting on the 11th so that they can hear the interviews, knowing that one of them are going to be coming into that seat?
We don't even know who's running in Dudley to tell you the truth.
Oh, I
It's
know,
a,
there's two.
they're supposedly 2 sticker campaigns, but we're not even sure if that's true.
Oh, okay.
So we don't even know. And
But
they may
we can't tell the elected official that she can't vote.
No, I know. I
She's
just-
gonna be able to vote if she wants to, or he wants to.
No, I know
So-
Mr. Chalk is saying, tell these 2
Right.
candidates, like if
No,
we knew it was the
no,
2 of
I
us
know.
running, we knew
Both.
it. You don't know.
No, you don't. You never
But that's
know.
why I don't know if we
Yeah.
should have it set in stone that they stay there, because, let's say every class has 5, couldn't you take the 20 kids and put them in the library? If every class had 5 kids, and how many classes we have, like 5, let's say, so there's 25 kids,
Well,
that's a
yeah,
class.
right now
of-
we've had we're talking about 1 or 2 per school.
But I'm just saying,
you know.
now that we're publicizing it, you gotta be prepared.
It's a legitimate point, and the fact that we don't have the supervision for it, we can't guarantee that without hiring an additional substitute. But also, the DESE recommends that you keep all kids in the testing.
Yeah, but I
unit.
still, as a teacher, I think that would distract, if I had a kid next to me, I'm saying, I'm rushing through this, I want free time too. I think it
Possibly.
could,
Then the other thing is if they get up and walk out, that's also another, well, I want to go too,
And
you
then
know?
a student might get restless, the one that's not
Yeah.
taking the test,
Yeah.
and disturb the others. Anyway,
Question would be is, and I'm not sure where the protocol is on this, but if the test were occurring in the morning with the intention that we're going to resume teaching at a certain point in time, could we excuse the absence of the student, that they
Mhm.
would arrive at school at the time that we were returning to instruction? But that, obviously, a family would have to be able to have transportation to do that.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
that could be an
absolutely.
option, is to just excuse them to arrive to school until that point in time.
Well, if they arrive by, say, 10 a.m., they're counted as present, tardy
Right.
present, so you'd really be excusing the tardy, but,
Right.
yeah.
So, I mean.
Yeah, that's an option.
If we gave them the options of, not coming in until the test was over,
Mhm.
or, I agree with Mrs. Kabala that at some point in time, if this grows in numbers, we're going to have to be able to adjust and maybe to bring all students to one location and, we put on a movie and they're in the auditorium watching a movie and we just have to have one person, overseeing the,
It could grow. It has in some communities, and
Does a Bay Path have them come in late, the kids that aren't tested? Some school system does
Well,
that, like on the day of testing, only 10th
I'm not
graders came
sure.
in. Some school does that, and they run buses a second, like it,
really.
I think it was, I don't know, it was a Bay Path, I'm not sure. This was several years ago, maybe they don't do it
I
anymore.
think that's a better idea, because I think even staying in there and reading a book or something, they might disturb people that are taking the test, the kids.
It's possible. You're saying that having them in another location? So, but if it's...
Or what Elaine.
Or have them come in later.
Come in.
That's a definite, that would be nice. It just isn't always going to be possible, because some people, whether they're working or they can't get the kid to school or whatever. The DESE stance on this is keep all kids in the room. Their stance, I think, emanates from a place of, if they're in the room, maybe they'll just go ahead and take the test, but that's not our point here.
Oh.
No.
Our point is really, the main point here is that every single person in the building is utilized. Because we have a lot of kids testing in small groups, we have some kids
Right.
testing one-on-one. So we just simply don't have the ability to do it. Now, certainly if it grew, which we're hopeful that it will not, and it really hasn't taken root here as it has in some communities, we could reassess that. But for right now, my feeling in talking to the principals is that they prefer to have the least amount of disruption possible, and that the kid leaving the room is more disruptive than them staying in any capacity. So,
Well, maybe you should add a sentence, if the numbers warranted, we'll put something in to cover us, rather than just saying, why don't you put something like, if the numbers warranted, to reevaluate, something like that.
do you want me to just simply continue to share this with the principals, not as a school committee directive, but just as a procedure that we use in the schools.
I think it's procedure like you do other things. I don't think it has to be a policy or anything. I don't think so.
Okay.
But I would put something in about if the number's warranted, we'll reassess the location or something like that.
Is it also true, if you don't mind, is it also true that in the different schools at the different grade levels, this has to be handled a little bit differently? Like you say, the younger grades might go into smaller groups or one-on-one. I imagine it's the older grades that are kind of staying together as a classroom for the most part.
Yeah, it's probably true that by the time you're looking at 10th grade, there are fewer, but I think from grade 2 to grade 3 to grade 8, it's pretty similar as far as how many people stay together, how many go into a small, a 3 to 10 person group, and how many are individual.
Okay.
That stays relatively consistent across those
I
grades.
think the procedures should fit the grade level of the schools.
And the
You might do
principal
it a little bit different, like she said, in the lower.
The principal probably has the best grasp
Right,
on each
yeah,
school.
I would just leave this up to, my opinion, the superintendent
I
and the
think it's a
director.
building decision, but you should have something right in case someone asks.
Yeah, I agree, I think so, because we have to do the same thing in every school,
Right.
because it is a, kind of a, it's a tricky issue.
Is there a certain place where you publish procedures like this so that people don't lose sight of them?
We don't have to come, but
Right,
we don't
we
even
But
know.
we don't know
technically.
there because there's
Here's a follow-up piece. If this is being video recorded by Mr. Earl, would it be possible to make the video available to the candidate that's elected on Monday night, that they would be able to view it on Tuesday so that they will have seen the interview process? Granted, they can't ask a question, but they will have at least seen it before they come in for deliberation.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Can that be turned around that fast? Thumbs up.
So-
I'd put it on, post it as I normally do on the YouTube channel,
Okay.
so they could view
So they
it.
could see it.
Okay.
That's a good idea. So that at least
So
get a feel for it.
They would have seen it, so
So-
it would be no different seeing it. The only thing that they're not going to be able to do is to ask a question,
Right,
but
that's all right.
Joe will ask questions for people.
Yeah. Thank you, Joe.
Joe?
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, then. Because I was about to say, I'm not, yeah.
What were you going to say?
Well,
Go
just
ahead.
in terms of, it would be really hard for me to participate in that finalist interviews and then not get to vote.
Yeah.
Just for me personally, to be able to ask somebody questions that I want to hear answers to and to evaluate their answer, and then to not get to cast a vote. I think for me, I was more leaning toward, I don't think I should even be on June 11th, part of that finalist interview. Does that, I mean, for me, I just don't, I can't communicate go ahead.
If I may, Mrs. O'Coin, I can speak to not getting to vote on things that are important to you.
Yes, you can.
Joe, my opinion, and it's obviously the school committee's decision, is that your input would be hugely valuable if you were there. Even if you don't get to vote, you do get to have influence. And I think that, especially as the chair of that search committee, that screening committee, I really think, personally as the superintendent, although I don't really have a say, I would like to see you be there.
I second that. I'm a new member. You have a lot of institutional knowledge, and you've been through this process before.
So that being said, I will be here then on Monday,
pressure.
June 11th.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Mrs. O'Coin kicks you out.
That's right, Madam Chair.
No, I wanted to
if you-
be able to vote. I was
I-
trying to
I
think
know
of
you were.
every.
I
You didn't have a
appreciate it.
celebration plan going for 801.
Can I ask a
21
question?
West.
If you guys are gonna do the interviews or the screenings on the 5th and the 6th, will we have any input? I know we can't have your input because that would violate open meeting law, but will we have any input to know who the candidates are prior to the
Oh,
11th?
you'll see their application.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure we
and
weren't gonna
we
show up
have to
here
know who-
and then have
And we have
all
to know who
systems
the
go.
candidates are too.
Okay.
Yep.
And then you can look at their application.
Thank you.
Will the application include their resume, so we have
Yes,
some background
yes.
information? Okay.
The only thing we want to work out is I know that various people today the way people put their applications on School Spring, you might have had to do an extra step or two to get all of the information,
was
so
different.
maybe we'll have Mrs., or make a suggestion that Mrs. Sullivan scan all of that and create a separate document,
That's a
not
good idea, yeah.
School Spring related, so that we're making sure. One of our candidates, the packet actually looked better because they also hand-delivered a packet as well as the electronic version, so it was easier to read. So if we actually have her make sure that everything's printed, that we have everything available, then everybody's
Right,
on an
we did.
even playing field.
Sounds good.
Good idea.
Thank you.
That's the way we did the
Yeah.
curriculum director too. It's easier to get your packet in your hand.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, do we have to change the time then on Monday, June 11th, for me to do the interview? We do, right? We have to move it to 4:30? Was that 4 o'clock?
I don't think so, because we were trying to do that for him to vote.
But you're not gonna vote.
You're
Oh,
not
you know
gonna
what?
vote.
So we can,
So we're all set. The
5:30.
schedule's
Good enough for you?
good as it
It is
is.
good for me.
You rather 5:30?
5:30 is fine.
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause you're not gonna vote.
because you're not gonna
Okay.
vote. I wanted to
I know.
move it up so you could vote.
True.
We do it all that
Okay.
evening. But-
So we're
on the
doing
agenda for
5:30, then we're
Thursday.
doing 6:45, and then we're
Yes.
doing
Yes.
possibility of 8 PM. So there's a possibility if we go up to, if we go up to 3 interviews, we're doing 5:30, 6:45, and 8
So you
PM.
want to go, let's go
What
earlier
if,
than
Let's
that.
go
I think you
what
should
if
go
needed a
earlier.
third, then we added the 3:30 time? What if we made it early? If you only had 2 candidates, we would start at 5 and then go 6:45. If
Okay.
you have
That's
3
true.
candidates, we start at 3:30.
Okay.
That way we're not starting someone out here at 8 o'clock.
Or we
You
can
just have
start
to-
early anyway and get out earlier.
Yeah,
That would be
likewise,
a
we
great
did.
idea.
Do we need an hour and 15 minutes for each person? Because if we run out of time, then we sit around for half an hour, kill time.
One of the members tonight had a
I wouldn't want to do that. My personal opinion is that when a principal receives a request, they would share it with the parent, as opposed to, say, putting it in the handbook. Because I don't think we want to be encouraging people to do this.
No,
you know.
no, that's not what I mean. I guess I'm thinking more for the principals themselves. Is there a booklet or something that the principals have, or a reference manual of some sort, so that when we make these kind of decisions and you put them in place, or the future superintendent puts them in place, we're not reinventing the wheel all the time.
Yeah, I just gave them a memo, but I think they do keep things, they probably have their MCAS library where they keep their MCAS stuff and all that. But I just simply provided it to them as a mandate in a memo.
Through the chair, if I can ask a question, are parents required to submit this in writing that they're opting out?
They're not required by the state.
So
We're asking them to do that so that
Okay.
we can prepare.
I would think if we had something that in their request, that they, if we're considering the option of them having a late arrival at school, if the parent notified the principal in advance that we're either staying home until arrival time of 10:30 or whatever it is, or we're going to have the student be in school and we'll be looking for the alternative, activity or location, then it will help the principal's plan to
Yeah.
see if there's only 1 or 2 kids, it's gonna be easy to deal with, but if it becomes, an amount of children and we have to make a decision, then they, if it's a large group, we might have to consider an alternative, to your point, Mrs. Cavallo.
Okay.
Can I just add to that, and not to be the bad guy or, it can't be an activity that other kids are gonna want to be a
Right.
part of.
I agree.
So, no movie, it's gonna have to be educational, and I'm just saying that because if I know MCAS, no kid really likes to take it, so if they know that Johnny's
There's a
watching a
movie,
movie,
Yeah.
well, Mom, I wanna opt out, so not trying to be a bad guy,
No,
but
no, it's a great
No,
point.
That's a
be-
good point.
Well, that's the point. If I
Something
see the kid
educational.
next to me having fun, I'm gonna not do well on the test. I'm just gonna rip right through it.
I think sometimes the way kids think, though, is they have that group think at times, and so they're like, Mrs. O'Coin's reading a book, but all my other friends are doing the test, so I want to, who knows? It's an individualized
You never
thing,
know.
and everybody thinks differently, but I agree with Mrs. Reed that we want to kind of, make it as little disruption as possible and not to look like it's something enormously pleasant. We respect people's right to do this. We have to respect that.
And I'm sure the parents are going to really think it through and what's best for their
Right,
child.
right, absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
extra work for the teacher, but they probably should have a lesson planned
Yeah.
based on what they're teaching in class, make them do work that
Something
corresponds
educational,
to the math
sure.
they're teaching or the English
Yeah.
they're teaching.
Okay.
All right, so all right, that's good. So I'll make those adjustments, share that with the principals, and I trust that that's going to be, followed in the future.
Thank you. Any other communications?
No, not from me.
How
not
about our
from me.
members?
I just,
You and-
just as an update, legislatively, the Senate took action today on amendment number 242. So there were two amendments that were being considered for regional transportation reimbursement. The 100% reimbursement failed, but Senator Goby's amendment 242 for 80% reimbursement passed unanimously, and that's moved on to conference committee, which was good news. The Regional Study Commission failed as an amendment, but it is on the outside section of the Senate Ways and Means budget, also directly going to conference committee. So the action now needs to be taken to make sure that there's a positive movement in the conference committee for both of those pieces to move on to the governor's desk.
Thank you.
So that was good news on the regional transportation.
That was
Yeah.
good news.
If I may, Mrs. O'Coin, I shared a thank you note with Senator Fatman and Senator Goby today, maybe around 3 o'clock, and got a response from both of them, and they both said the same thing, like, I shared this, I said on behalf of the school district, the school committee, myself, we want to thank you. We know that you get a lot of complaints, but this is a thanks for your support of this, and it was unanimous, so it was both of them. And they both said, yeah, now hope it passes in the
Yeah.
conference committee. And I said, we understand that there's always that chance, but you can only do what you can do. So, we'll see.
Anyone else with communications? Okay. Superintendent's report, Mr. Desto.
Thank you, Ms. O'Coin. Just a small number of things tonight. First, I want to send a quick word of congratulations and thanks to the many faculty and over 500 students, including Rebecca, who attended the Shepherd Hill Prom Saturday night. It was
Really good point, which was that they wanted to be able to contemplate the candidate in time and perhaps do some, debriefing on that candidate before they moved to the next one, so that they wanted to stand with them in isolation. So some time to think before you went into a process with somebody else. Maybe if it's writing your own notes, maybe if it's asking somebody else for clarification on what you think you heard. So I think the difference with this is that it's a different approach than what we did before. When we interviewed before, we were interviewing for a superintendent. We're interviewing for an interim, and our conversation about that really was, we're really looking for something different in the perspective of what that person's bringing in than if we were just hiring a superintendent. We're looking for that perspective that somebody's going to give us for moving forward, not coming in and taking things over and doing things. So it's just, I'd err on the side of caution, because we're looking at people that have a great breadth of experience that might have a lot to share with us, that we're not shortchanging the time, but I don't want it to be, I think an hour and 15 minutes per interview process is fine.
How about if we started at 4, regardless of how many candidates there are?
So do 4, 5:15, and then do 7 o'clock?
If we came with three.
If we came with 3. But if we started at 4, and then we'd fill slots from 4 to 5:15 to 7, then we would be done by 8:15.
That's right.
Okay.
Joe, they want to start at 4.
I'm sorry.
Is that agreeable
If
to you?
if we started at 4, second would be 5:15. If there was a third, it would be 7 PM.
This is on June 11th? You're
On
talking
June
about this?
11?
Yep, that's fine.
Can we do that?
Yes.
Can you do that?
So
Why
that's
we
the
do last
final
one be
hour.
7, it'll be
We want it
6:30?
at what? 4?
So she's,
6:30, isn't it, Elaine?
Huh?
Isn't it 6:30? Did you say an hour and 15 minutes? So 5.
An hour and 15, so 4 to
4
5:15.
Yeah.
And
5
And then
to
do,
6:30.
you want to do start at 5:30 to 6:45? And then 7 to 8:15? Or do you, I'm
Yes.
thinking the hour and 15 minutes includes the person leaving and being gone and us having some time. So I'm thinking the interview process is an hour.
Yep.
That gives us a
So
15-minute
she's saying-
leeway.
So the next one would start at 5:15, you're saying?
So the next one would start at 5:15.
Right, till 6:30 though, not 7.
No,
No.
then the next one would be starting, so 5:15 to, it would be 6:30.
Yeah, 6:30. and
Thank you. The math person.
Did you get that, Sandy?
Never ends.
I
To
just want the
7:45.
start
It'll be up
time.
before 8,
7:30
Joe. It'll be up
and
before 8.
4 o'clock.
You're still
And the
officially.
others are, you met on the 23rd today
Yep, we
at
met
4.
today. Yep, correct.
Okay,
Yep.
So we got it all.
We're good.
So you know what times to call these people? You know what time, they said 4, 5:15, and 6:30, right? That's what, you just have to tell the people when to come.
Yes.
4, 5:15.
Okay, everybody's good with it? All right, so we'll go, that was very good, Joe. You
Thank
did a
you.
good job.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Coin.
And the committee
Thank
did.
you.
Thank you. Consideration of request to enroll foreign exchange student policy JF, and that's Mr. Desto.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Coin. So as you might recall from the last meeting, this item was tabled due to the withdrawal of the student in question. So the student, well, it just didn't work out for whatever reason. But the same family, Charlton family, has found another student who wishes to spend her junior year at Shepherd Hill Regional High School. So as you remember, included in your package was a memo from Mr. Chaplin recommending that we accept Sybil, and I'm not going to try the last name, from Lithuania, who have more harsh winters than we do, so perhaps she'll feel like she's in Florida when she comes here. She does meet all the criteria for our policy, so I recommend, I join Mr. Chaplin in recommending your approval.
Okay, and I will entertain a motion for that approval. Do I have a second? Discussion?
I would
Yeah.
just like to reiterate from the last meeting that in the future, we should probably take a look at utilizing agencies that actually pay tuition to come to the school.
Yeah, I'm just kind of starting to look into that at this point.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Okay, and we do have a warrant this evening. And our next meeting dates, okay? School committee meetings. Wednesday, June 13th, and that'll be at the Shepherd Hill Regional High School, and that's our reorganization.
Was, in my 4 years, which isn't a heck of a long time, but in the 4 years I participated in the prom, it was the smoothest one we've had. And the students were just amazing. And of course, the event wouldn't happen if it weren't for the tens of hours put forth by the staff and students who planned it, and by the, I can't even count the number of staff that gave up an entire Saturday night until at least 11 o'clock to be at the DCU Center to chaperone the event. I mean, the kids looked great, behaved well, seemed to get along great with one another. I know maybe I'm missing something because I'm not a teenager, but it was really, I was really proud, and you're always on edge that night. You're really always on edge, kind of like a papa waiting up for the Cubs to come home, and just, you know, you're thankful when noon on Sunday arrives and you haven't gotten any calls, but the kids were just fabulous, and I'm very, very proud of them. I want to mention that. Also want to give a quick reminder of the Memorial Day concerts that we have upcoming in the next few days. You already know that now. Tomorrow night at 6:30 p.m., Mason Road, Grade 1. And, you know, everybody's welcome to all these, but if you are planning to attend that one in particular, get there early, because parking is at a premium. We should charge for parking at Mason Road School, boy, oh boy. Also, Dudley Elementary has their concerts Friday at both 10 a.m. and 1:30. Heritage School tomorrow, 10:30 and 1:30, and then another show for veterans Friday at 1:30. And Charlton Elementary is hosting, having an American Pride Spirit Day Friday all day long. So our district continues to honor our veterans. I'm really happy about that, and the younger kids learn that gratitude, I think, the better.
Sandy, could you just send an email with those dates, because he was going too fast.
I'm Italian, Mrs. O'Coin, you know that. You gotta follow my hands, not my voice. Couple more things, just a reminder to the committee that the senior activities that'll be coming up here soon, on May 31st, Thursday, the senior banquet is 6 p.m. at Holy Cross. And June 3rd, of course, is graduation at the DCU Center, and we all have to remember it's at 6 p.m. this year instead of the usual 1 p.m. This is a very special senior class. You know, Mr. Chaplin, Mr. Resner, Mr. Leach are all kind of sorry to see them go. It's a group of kids that, you know, I've always said when when your oldest kids in your school do the right things largely, your school will go the right way. And not to say that things are perfect, but man, they are a wonderful bunch, and we are going to miss them truly. And speaking of missing people, I just want to say very quick, because I don't want to embarrass them, but another real quick thank you to Joe Petrozak. Joe, I thought about what I want to say, and I want to keep it brief because I know how you are. But I just want to tell you, you've been nothing but a class act, and have been the epitome of the kind of person we want representing this district. And I hope that you and I will someday work together again, because you're the kind of guy I always want on my team. That's it.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Mr. Desto.
You're welcome.
And it's ditto for all of us. You said it so well.
Thank you.
We will miss you, Joe.
And we miss you guys as well.
You told me I couldn't say anything, so I won't. You told me not to talk.
Just, you put it in writing at a later
Yeah,
date.
right, exactly.
Greg covered it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
And everyone I know who knows you feels the same way.
Thank you again.
And that concludes superintendent's report?
Yes.
Okay, student rep, Rebecca.
Okay, so surprisingly, since like the seniors have been like leaving and like all the activities are going on, I don't have anything for the schools today, but I would just like to say a very big thank you to all of you, especially Mr. Desto and Mr. Chaplin, for picking me as a student representative. This has been a really great experience, and I feel like it showed me how to be like an adult, which sounds like weird, but like imagine if I'm like fresh out of college and I attend like meetings like this, I won't know what to do, but like now I do, so that's like really cool, because I think this is like the last meeting I'll be going to. So I just want to say thank you guys so much for including me and for giving the students a voice through me, so I really appreciate that, so thank you guys very much.
Great job.
Thank you.
You did a great job, and you contributed too.
Thank you.
Rebecca, you don't mean that you're going to act like us, do you?
No, not at all.
I'm just kidding. We appreciate you, Rebecca.
Thank you.
We will really miss you.
And as years go on, we're going to the district is going to call on you to come back.
Oh,
And
yes.
whether it's as an alumni to give us information about what we really did well and what you think we should have done better, whether it's to speak at an event to younger kids who maybe can learn from what you've learned, or whatever it is, we'll try to stay in touch, and don't lose touch with your district.
And she may be on the school committee someday.
You never know.
Maybe.
You never
We'll
know.
see.
Question, Rebecca, can you share with us what your college plans are?
So I've been kind of like back and forth, because like I thought about going to like the medical field, but then I really I shadowed a PT, and then I like really thought about it.
Organizational meeting, June 13th. Wednesday, June 27th, and that will be at the Charlton Middle School at 7 p.m. Budget and Finance Subcommittee is going to be Wednesday, June 13th at Shepherd Hill, and that is at 5 p.m. And the Search Committee had their meeting this evening at the Charlton Middle School, and that took place at 4 p.m. Next meeting will be on Tuesday, June 5th, Shepherd Hill Regional High School, and it will be 5:30 p.m. And Wednesday, June 6th, at Shepherd Hill Regional High School, 5:30 p.m. And the special meeting of the school committee, and that will be for the interim superintendent finalist interviews, will be Monday, June 11th, and that will start at 4 p.m. Future agenda items, FY 2019 budget, school improvement plans, cameras on special education, student vans, review approval of student handbooks, 2018, 2019 school year. Any other additions?
Just a question, we took care of this cameras tonight on the sped
Yes,
vans.
that's right.
But,
If there's any, do we need any information other than what you gave us tonight? So
I'll have the contract at the next meeting
Okay.
for signature.
we started the honor of recognizing retirees by asking them to select a book. Will we be doing that before the end of the school year, or will we be doing that in the fall?
I would try to do it before the end of the school year.
Okay.
Yeah.
That reminds me, someone told me that they didn't get their book. Did you give out all the books last year?
We thought so, so let's
Yeah.
talk about it after.
Okay.
Yeah.
She just reminded me maybe one was omitted. And Okay. Executive session. We are going to enter into executive session to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel or contract negotiations with non-union personnel. Also, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining if an open meeting will have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the public body. Only to reconvene into regular session to take votes if necessary, and then adjournment. I will now take a roll call to enter into executive session. Jamie?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Joan? Yes.
Yes.
Mary? Elaine? And Stephanie. We're now in executive session.
And how much school and like how much money it costs, and I just thought like that really wasn't for me, and I don't want to spend all this money to, you know, like do something that I'm not 100% invested in. So I'm going to Worcester State University, majoring in biology, but I think since I love like CSI kind of stuff, not like the show, but like just in general, like, well, that too, but just in general, like crime stuff, but I wouldn't want to deal with it like head on. I think and I love lab work, like I love doing all this stuff, so I think I want to be like a crime scene like technician, like be in a lab and just like do all like the behind the scenes stuff to like show evidence and stuff. And I only need a bachelor's degree in science, and like any science, so right after college I can just start looking for jobs or like internships or stuff like that.
It's a great school.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So that's
Have you
what
eaten in the cafeteria there yet?
No, I haven't
It is
visited.
unbelievable.
Really?
I'm telling you right now, I'm not here to promote Worcester State University, but I took remember we ate there?
Oh, yeah.
We were at a conference down there, and oh my goodness, we were just blown away. It was outstanding, and I'll just add to that you're going to be successful no matter what you choose.
Thank you.
But if you change your mind, we will gladly take a biology teacher who can help the show choir.
Just come in my spare time, yes.
Yes, okay.
So we will miss you,
Thank you.
Rebecca.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you at graduation.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, that brings us up to new business, and I will change the order. C, district office staffing, and we have Mr. Kuchar here this evening from the MASC, and we will have a discussion. And Greg, do you want to add anything to it? Mr. Kuchar?
Just a quick note for Mr. Kuchar. We're just grateful to have you here. As I said to you before the meeting, we thank you for coming all this way. A lot of people think Charlton is Kansas, but it's really not. So we're grateful to have you here to discuss essentially what support your organization may have for us as the committee looks to review district office staffing. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Among the things that we may be able to do to help you is to help you think about some of the things that you need to think about as you look at your district structure, and to provide you with some resources. A lot of districts figure this out on their own, but in order to get a sense of what the best organizational structure might be, it's always helpful to start by talking to your own community and talking to your faculty and getting some sense of what they're thinking. So among the things we could do is we could conduct some focus groups for you with the faculty and with the stakeholders in the community, if it's appropriate, to get some idea of what the people who are part of the district are thinking about this. There are people who do this as a consulting service. This is not something that we do for a fee. This is a regular member service, but we're not really the experts on what the best structure is, because if you've seen one structural scheme, you've seen one structural scheme. And only you and your constituents know what's best for Dudley-Charlton. So I prepared a couple of sort of guides, including the one on the big paper here. And I can provide it to the secretary electronically. There's no magic about this, but we did do some research to pull this stuff together. And the first thing I would say to you is that during a transition in leadership, during an interim period is the best time to think about change, because there's freedom to take a step back. There's no sense of urgency. And the beauty of your situation is that while you are going through a transition, the district is in good standing. This is not a place that's a mess that somebody has to come in and clean up. Believe me, we have some of those situations, and it's very difficult to find people who are willing to do that. This is somebody who would be coming into a district that's doing well, that simply wants to continue to do better, and that's the best kind of a place to be. Some people want to think about the job description for the superintendent and just how much responsibility you want to place with line authority to the superintendent. Now, you don't have the flexibility that some of the larger districts have. If you look at the second and third pages, I separated the basic functions of a school district into budget and operations, student support services, curriculum and instruction, building-based management, other special functions that you might have, and some community issues that you might want to think about. Now, there are probably 30 lines in this outline, and in a big district, there's somebody who's a director of each line, because they have big budgets and a lot of people to do this stuff. In a smaller district, sometimes the superintendent is the business manager and the personnel director. So it puts quite a strain on the central office, and it puts quite a strain on the principals, who end up doubling as curriculum directors or building-based personnel directors, whatever it might be. So the key here is to think about the different functions, to think of those functions which you would prioritize, and then to figure out the best way to allocate the responsibilities to see if you have allocated them, in fact, in the right places. In some districts, the director of student support services is an assistant superintendent who oversees special education, Title I, guidance, all kinds of school health, anything related to the well-being of students, and the guidance and English language learners as well, and attendance officers. That's a large function for a single person. I honestly don't know whether your special ed director has all of this stuff under the special education director's responsibility, but somebody's got it. Somebody has it somewhere.
Yes.
With regard to budget and operations, I don't know whether all these responsibilities are also under one person, but in many districts, you'd have an assistant superintendent looking at that whole function. In some districts, you might have actually as many as 3 central office deputies to a superintendent, a deputy superintendent and a couple of assistant superintendents handling these kinds of responsibilities for all the kids that you have. And then there are situations where the building-based managers act as sort of mini superintendents for their buildings and are responsible for all those functions inside the building. So in some districts, the superintendent is the chief the principal is the chief curriculum officer for that building, who studies the data and does the strategic planning and has the capacity to do that. Of course, those people also have 1 or 2 assistant principals working with them to cover some of the other responsibilities. There are also some what I call higher order questions, which are like, how do you address the question of equity? Because if you ask 10 people what equity means, you get 10 different answers. How do you address the question of diversity, which is a very complicated term, as my left-handed wife constantly reminds me about the world being a conspiracy against left-handed people. No offense to any of you, but I get this a lot. So, when you look at curriculum and instruction, there's an incredible amount of responsibility there. And just to give you some sense to go further, I outlined the characteristics of what a curriculum director needs to know and needs to do. So this is pretty heavy. As I say, we can assist you in thinking about how you go about it, and assist you in trying to come to some consensus internally. You could delegate this to a consultant, you could pay somebody to do it. Frankly, I don't think you need to spend any money to do this. The Massachusetts Association of School Business Officers can provide some help as well. John Crafton is the former executive director there, and he's the person who handles that particular end of it. And then, of course, there are people who'll be very happy to take $50,000 or $75,000 from you and take somebody else's plan and do a search and replace and just replace the name of that district with your district. That happens a lot with strategic planning, which is another area that you really don't have to pay somebody else to do. You could do that internally as well. So if you wanted to try to work out a plan where we might try to work with you to interview your stakeholders and get some feedback, possibly to look at what some other like districts do and show you some samples of how things work, we could probably put that together for you and over a period of time. Now, it's at the end of the year. People are going to be gone pretty soon. But I think you've got 3 or 4 months, 5 months to think about this before you think about what will happen at the end of next year. I'd be happy to take your questions. I'm always very concerned in small districts where the superintendent ends up being superintendent of everything, and I know that I saw something that came out, and when the superintendent is superintendent of everything, some things that should get done often can't get done, and some of that happens around curriculum and instruction. There's so much to do to prepare kids for successful academic careers, much more than just getting ready for testing and MCAS testing and stuff like that. So I'd be happy to take your questions, and we'd be happy to provide what assistance we could to you as a member service. We try not to say no to our members. We try to help. But I will tell you that there are people who know
This is what we are now.
know a lot more about this than we do. I see.
Mary, this is.
Okay. I think what you may not have on this list is all the different responsibilities of all the people underneath here. This is not an unusual structure. Not at all. But you might want to have a conversation with some of your key central office people to see what they think is an appropriate allocation of resources. And then you'd have to think about what the cost of expanding this would be and where the money will come from.
How long do you think a focus group would take, and how quickly would we have the results from it?
Well, focus groups can happen very quickly,
Sure.
and results can happen very quickly.
Okay.
What generally happens with focus groups, when we come in and do them, sometimes districts ask us to do this for school culture or district culture. Sometimes it's done as part of it when people are looking for a superintendent and they want to know what their candidates or next superintendent needs to know. And we come in for a day or two, talk to as many people as we can, and then what usually happens is you take the data that you have and you go home and lock yourself in a room on Sunday morning with just me and C-SPAN, and you write it up. It's and share it and then kick it around.
So if I could follow up to that, it's possible to get it done before the end of the year, even though that's really short timelines?
It could be done before the end of the year if all of the people were here and we could plan an opportunity to do this. This would mean talking to the key administrators, probably want to talk to your bargaining unit leadership, others that you feel are important to talk to, could brainstorm with some of the school committee members. It could be done before the end of the year. This is a busy time for us, so we'd want to get moving on this fairly quickly and rely on the districts to help us out with the scheduling.
I just worry with Mr. Desto leaving that we would really value his input, and so I would not want to not have you part of it.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I can participate remotely though, too. I mean,
Okay.
I'm always, my heart's gonna be here, and I'll be glad. I'm a phone call away if there's ever anything I can do. And I like two things you said, Mr. Kuchar, better than all else. First of all, I really like this, and thank you for taking the time to put this
okay.
together. This is very helpful. It gives a real nice overview. I like that you said what the cost was first. The cost is, the price is right.
Well, just let me qualify that. You've been paying us dues for 70 years.
Yes, we have.
So
Yes,
it's
we
not
have.
like you haven't paid for it.
No,
So
no. Well, we
please don't
appreciate
think
that.
this is a big favor that we're doing out of the goodness of our hearts. It's a member service. We do it for any district that asks.
Yeah, thank you. And then I also agree with you, Glenn, that this is more of a long-term study, you know, it's something that the committee can really take a look at over the span of maybe 6 months or something like that. What would be a first, like, Glenn, if you were, I know that it's different in every community, but what would you recommend to the school committee as a first, what's the first thing we should do?
Talk to the stakeholders and see what they think.
So you're
And that-
talking about the staff, first of all, district office staff, administration, teachers, and community members.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't know that the community members will have very different concerns.
Sure.
What we often do is come in and talk to people at different times of the day and end the day with a meeting with local community members and stakeholders. Now, I will just tell you as a phenomenon that unless there is real trouble in a district, people are not coming out at night to go to meetings. I mean, if this district were under receivership, if it was bankrupt, if somebody had stolen everything, if there was corruption, there'd be a room full of people here. But this is a good district, and it's been run well, and your house is in order. So the questions about district organization is not something that I think the average parent is home worrying about. Your municipal leaders might have some thoughts, and by the way, one of those options for you is whether or not you want to do some shared services with some of your member communities. I'm not suggesting that you do, but there are always those possibilities with regard to sharing services or sharing services with another district. So those are options that we put out there. Superintendents can think about that. We would start with the superintendent and talk to the superintendent at some length, and then work our way through the chain. So if we had a couple of full days of scheduling, we get those conversations held and then summarize what we hear.
Glenn, thank you for putting this together. I
Okay.
appreciate you coming. Greg, do you think that it would be possible to schedule a couple of days with the appropriate people so that MASC could come in and meet with them?
I think it's possible. This time of the year, I think one of the key, as I think about, you know, the overwhelmingness, I'm pretty sure that's not a word, but of the job and what I do, what the principals do, what we all do in administration, I think I would want to sit down with the principals and say, where do you need more support that we haven't been able to give you? You know, now maybe somebody might say, well, I need an assistant principal, and they wouldn't be wrong. But so I'd want to do that. Certainly we want to talk to the teachers, and that's sort of the question that I keep thinking of. When you think about what you do on a daily basis, how can we help you be better? And then who can do that? You know what I mean? So it's possible, but this time of year is really, really, really booked solid for a whole lot of things. It might be possible to put together maybe one initial meeting to maybe plan for what's going to happen coming down the line. You know, say like we meet one time before the end of the year and plan maybe a summer meeting and then a couple meetings in the fall or something like that. Maybe we start working on a survey that goes out. I don't know. But there's certainly a possibility that we could get a good number of people there.
You can also make some of the responsibility of the interim superintendent. That could be a condition of the interim superintendency, and it's absolutely appropriate for the superintendent to save us all a lot of time by doing some of the initial brainstorming with the stakeholders, just to get some ideas up front so that they can be summarized more quickly. I don't think there's anybody holding the secret sauce. I think people just want to kick some ideas around, and I don't know that anybody's got any specific plans about what they would do.
Through the chair, I have two questions, and one of them is, I think one concern that's been voiced, and I know that I've voiced it, is a district of our size, most districts in the state of our size have an assistant superintendent. A lot of them do. I'm always more concerned about what we can't get to versus what we're actually able to do. And I don't know if there are particular things that have to try to not get up to the level of Mr. Desto's desk. And one of the items that I came up with was human resources. So Mr. Desto is the point person for any personnel issue or dispute that can be time-consuming, not the collective bargaining piece of it, but any personnel issues. And I know our local town just hired a person to specifically just do human resources. So I know that at times has been very time-consuming for him. That's not something that's on the list per se, and something that we should consider. Specific to the process, though, I'm wondering if you've ever used any kind of electronic survey process to get some of the preliminary information in, so that you can streamline that before you get into a focus group situation, and then maybe gather information from more and then streamline the process of who comes in to do focus groups?
Yeah,
Is that an
that can
approach?
actually be done very quickly. And if we were to do that, I'd probably want to talk to the superintendent to get a sense of what specifically you want to pose to the stakeholders. And then we can have a survey up in 4 or 5 hours. And then people can start responding, and then we get the data as it comes in and gather that. That's easy.
Okay. Maybe that's a way to get preliminary information.
I can tell you this, we get 20 times more responses electronically than we do with live people when we're trying to get feedback from the community.
Okay. So,
It seems like a very
But you can
effective
do it
use
from
of
the
time.
comfort of your living room.
I think that's very reasonable in the last month, you know,
Yeah.
to be able to do.
So we can work something out.
Sure.
Superintendent.
So going through the chair, I think that it would be valuable to, the reason I'm kind of saying I think we need to do it now also is because we're trying to show our staff how much we care about them and how much we value their opinions. And if we're at the very beginning process of thinking about this, we should wrap our brains around what they believe most important aspects are, so we can provide our framework around that. That shows me as a person who works in the school, if I was one, that you care and value me and my opinions at the beginning of the process. That's all I was trying to get to.
Anyone else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Glenn, you did a good job, and this is really
Okay,
advantageous
so I'll wait
for
until
us.
I hear from you about what you want to do for next steps and how to proceed.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate you coming
You know,
out.
I've been here many times. This is the first time I've ever been here when the sun was out, so I didn't miss the turn.
Okay.
And I also have to say, just personally, the very first song I ever learned to play from sheet music was Your Grand Old Flag. And I played it so much that the neighbors complained. Everybody complained. My friends still joke about it. And I found myself standing there listening to the kids.
You remember the notes.
And
So
I
it's been
remember
fun.
that song too, because we
Kids were
used to always
terrific.
sing it when we were kids.
Thank you.
Thank you again
Thank
for
you
coming
so
out.
much.
Through the chair. It would be really helpful to also have job descriptions for each of these boxes on this structure chart.
Yep.
Okay. And do we have job descriptions, or
I
do
think
we
we
have
have
to
one.
work on them
Do
till?
you want to hear
because-
something funny?
What?
I think we have a job description for every job in the district except superintendent.
Well, you do everything.
Not funny, ha ha. So I could create my own destiny, I guess.
You could make watching over everything they do and everything that, and do everything they can't get to. That would be your job description.
Yes, I suppose, and I wish I were kidding, but I couldn't find one for superintendent. But there are, they do exist. No, oh, no, too short.
So as a next step, what would be our next step to?
Well,
get
it
this
sounds like the
rolling?
first thing I would speak to Glenn and, ask him for maybe historical knowledge on how to get that survey into motion. And then, once I kind of know how the process might work, I would reach out to all of you and to all of our administrators and say, what kinds of questions do we want to ask? And then the committee can whittle those down from what will probably be a lot and get a survey up, certainly no later than sometime in June anyway. And then, maybe start having some results by the end of the school year. I guess the first step is for me to reach out to Mr. Kuchar and have a conversation and then get back in touch with the committee after that.
Great.
That sound right?
Sounds good.
Those job descriptions are online, Mary.
Are they
Yeah,
online?
they're online.
Okay.
But not superintendent.
So
Maybe that one's hidden.
Superintendent.
Maybe it's
Everything
hidden.
else.
So that's good, that we have them online.
Yeah, I can certainly provide in a hard copy of the district office positions.
That would be
That's
great.
no problem.
Thank you.
Okay, any other discussion before we leave it? Okay. So now we will do the FY 2019 budget. Mr. Desto.
I think for the second meeting in May, I don't remember the last time it's
Good.
I'm going to say what I always say. All of us at this table and in this room live in this world where we're constantly analyzing and trying to solve the next problem. So we almost never stop to celebrate. And I don't know that there's celebration in line here, but I definitely want to say that it feels better now than it has before. And so with the passing of the town budgets at both town meetings, we now have certainty in our budget for the coming year. And I guess I just wanted to take this opportunity to say one more thank you and congratulations to everyone who played a part in that, everyone here, certainly in this room, who worked at it, provided guidance, hard work throughout the process, and we know we still have a long way to go before we can ever rest, and maybe we never will be able to rest, but this is the best position we've been in a while. So I want to be sure to acknowledge that and let you know, I think you all do know probably, that Mrs. O'Coin and I, at the respective town meetings, were able to say our public thank you to the communities again for their support in a timely manner after the budget passed. And we had, I know it was kind of sparsely populated in Dudley, but we had, 600 people in Charlton who were able to hear our heartfelt thank you. So
That was great.
yeah, and we got a little bit of applause. So I think people really feeling good about the school district and the fact that the override passed, and we're in pretty good position. So
I think everybody felt really good that evening.
I didn't get too many dirty looks.
No, we didn't get any. We didn't get any at all.
So that's really all I have on
Okay,
budget. I always
thank
put
you.
it there just in case people have any information to share.
Director of Finance and Operations report, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you very much. At the last meeting, we were talking about the special education transportation contract and the inclusion of cameras onto the vehicles. I had reported that the approximate cost based on their initial quote would be about $21,000 or $23,000 off the top of my head. I went back to them and expressed the committee's desire to have these, but not pay for them, basically. And we did reach an agreement that I hope the committee finds acceptable for a one-time fee of $5,000 to put on all vehicles and include in the contract going forward.
Good work.
That's very good work, Rich.
Thank you.
It's like Scott Boris.
I'll entertain a motion to accept this proposal from Vanpool.
So moved.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous.
Thank you. So I just had a quick update on the FY19 budget process as it works its way through the State House. You see the numbers there. Again, just to reiterate, it's nice not to live and die with every release of new numbers, so we're very fortunate there. And just a last note on the Dudley Middle School domestic hot water heater. It did give out finally, just as the new one was being put in, so I think we only lost 1 day of water in that whole process.
Hot water.
Hot water, yes.
And water.
What was the final cost on that? Do you have a final bill?
We don't have the final bill, but it's going to be right at that $50,000 mark. That's all I have for this
And
evening.
that concludes Mr. Matthews' report. Any other questions for Mr. Matthews? Okay. Naming of the district facilities procedure, and Mr. Desto.
Thank you, Mrs. O'Coin. So there's two things. First, included in your package is a revised copy of the procedure for naming school facilities. I think it hits all the points that were suggested at the last meeting, and the committee should probably consider the procedure first, and if that's acceptable, and then, if desired, take up the discussion of the specific request that's on the table regarding the Shepherd Hill Auditorium. Also, of course, included in your package was a letter from district music teacher Julie Winans to name the Shepherd Hill Auditorium in honor of Connie Galley. So, you know, again, procedure, and then if the committee should choose to take up that request tonight, possibly even take it to a vote, and you need my input, I'm prepared to provide that. I'm also prepared to be quiet if you want me to do that.
I'll make a motion to accept this procedure for naming or renaming of school district facilities.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Oops.
Did you have a
Oh,
comment, Mary?
I did, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
I'll just say this,
Mary.
I'm good with it, except that I still have a little bit of a concern that by even putting this out there, it's just gonna invite people to submit names, to have various rooms and auditoriums and things in the district named after people. So I just put that out there because I don't know quite how to word it so that we can make it clear that it's a very rare occurrence that this would happen, and under extenuating circumstances.
Are you still for like having a procedure or just not putting it out there?
Well, I'm good with having it a procedure, but I guess I'm not thinking that the language is strong enough to say that it is highly uncommon for this to happen.
And I tend to agree with you.
So I don't know if somebody has some suggestion on how to word that or where to word that. I was kind of thinking in the first sentence where it says it's an important matter that deserves thoughtful attention and is a rare or uncommon occurrence, or you know what I'm trying to say?
I do. I think for me, though, I think if I felt strongly enough, Mary, I don't think that a word in here would deter me from putting that name forward. You know what I mean? I just can't see, I understand your point completely to have it in there. I just, if I felt strongly about something like that, I don't think, if I saw rarely, that would deter me from putting the name forward, and then the committee having to do what they do with that.
Can we still think about the procedure, but yet we can vote on Connie? Or do we have to have the procedure first?
Well, I made a motion for the procedure.
Yeah.
I'd like to take a vote on it to see if I think we've said everything. I agree with Mr. Petrusek. I think I said at the last meeting, if I want Mr. Smith to get that building, I don't care what you write, I'm still gonna go forward. It's the superintendent's responsibility to say, this doesn't fit the criteria. Everyone, you can make a case for practically every teacher you ever had, that they deserve it, but the superintendent would say, we understand this, but this is beyond the call of duty. So, and I think the responsibility is with the superintendent, not with us to decide, because we're not there. And I might have my favorite teacher, and you might have your favorite, but there's someone out there that might be even more worthy that no one ever acknowledged. So I think it should come from someone in the community, or someone who had a direct involvement, but the buck stops with the superintendent. I think the procedure is fine. I agree with Mr. Petrusek. No matter what you write, if you think that person deserves it, you have to be told by the superintendent, no, you don't. I think that's what the procedure would tell you. So I'd like to take a vote. unless there's more discussion.
Okay.
I think it's really hard for the superintendent to say, no, you don't deserve it, because there are so many really great people in the district. So I think that puts a lot on the superintendent's shoulders too, to say, yeah, you're really great, but yeah, you're not good enough to have something named after you. So that's where my struggle is. So Mr. Desto, if you feel comfortable with, if when you're in this position and somebody comes to you with a really great teacher that they want to name something after, saying, it doesn't meet the criteria, or, we don't commonly do this, so it doesn't fall into the scope, then that's fine. I'm okay with that.
Right. Comfortable, no. Definitely not, but comfortable enough to, if I felt like it was really, not something that the school committee should have to, take up and be the bad guy on, because then it would be almost like if it were a frivolous sort of request. I would kindly try to find the words to deter the request, to say, this is the procedure that we have. It's, it's almost like the expression, in the extremely unlikely event of an emergency, whatever.
Right.
You hear that on your TV. It's kind of like what you're saying, that this is something that's really once every quarter century, or whatever, possibly. As superintendent, I would be happy having that, not happy, but I would be willing to have that conversation. And if the person felt so strongly and they had a good amount of people behind them, then, well, we would have to bring it to this table. And in speaking to some of the other superintendents whose districts have policies, in fact, I believe one of them whose policy Sandy and I modeled our draft after, they said they had one just recently that was, pretty touchy, but that other than that, there hasn't been many over the years. This is the first one that I've ever received, like, more than just in talking, that was in any way formal. I don't think it's going to be a regular occurrence, but, again, anytime something like this happens, you never know. There could be people who say, well, what about this person? Which,
I feel, though, if the procedure doesn't go through, we still can vote on it. We did name things without a procedure in the past. We have Canavan, the library. We have Carmignani, the field. So those are the two that I can think of. So even if we're not satisfied yet with the procedure, we could still work on it. But I feel I would like to go forward with the request for Connie this evening.
Can I just make a suggestion that perhaps the language change to the last paragraph and adding some words such as recognizing the, no, I had it and I lost it. Recognizing the rare honor of naming a facility, the selection, and then go into that piece, which then turns around and talks about that it's at the sole discretion of the school committee. But I think it might be addressing your concern of recognizing that this is a rare honor, the selection of individuals distinguished by naming of a school building or facility in their honor or by placing their name in a location of honor, as well as the specific means by which the individuals are recognized, shall be at the sole discretion of the Dudley-Charlton Regional School Committee. And then I think that addresses your concern that the superintendent has to be the yay or nay on that. But I think it might help move it. I think a procedure, it makes sense, but.
I kind of look at it from a different light, and I know you guys have been looking at this longer than I've been on the committee, but we don't currently have a policy or procedure. So currently, there's a lot more on Mr. Desto or the superintendent's shoulders to make a determination. At least now there's an outline and a guideline, if we vote this in, that he can, or whoever comes into his position next, can fall back on. So maybe that will even lessen the possibility from what you've already not had a lot. Maybe this would even give a better sense to someone that's proposing it, a more strict sense.
And then we can change it if we feel that, it's not strong enough or
we're receiving too many requests.
I really don't think, as you say, we'll get that many requests. In 40 years, we've had 3.
Yeah, it's hard to,
This will be the 3rd I can think of. Maybe others that we never came, the superintendent, I know there was one years ago that they wanted to name the Dudley Middle School after Regina Hedman, the math teacher. Remember her?
Right.
She was a math
I
teacher there.
remember
And
her.
they wanted to name the building after her.
What was her last name?
Heatherman or Regina?
Heatherman, yeah.
Heatherman. And Mr. Thibodeau said, he took that upon himself and said, no, that would be
Yeah.
too much to name a whole building after a person.
So
So I don't think we're gonna have, and I think, like you say, the procedure is better, at least there's something here to fall back, and before it was just like, no, I don't want you to do
No,
that.
I agree that we should have a
Yeah.
procedure.
I think this pretty much says it, I think,
And if we're not satisfied, we
yeah,
can
that's why it's
always-
procedure, not policy, you can change it much easier if we don't
Well, we'll
like
see
it.
how many requests
Yeah,
we get.
exactly, what happens,
That's
yeah.
right. Yeah, you can always change it quickly
Yeah,
when it's a
right.
If we
procedure
get
too.
too many, then our procedure.
You're gonna have to
has
change the
changed.
procedure.
Okay, any other discussion before we take the vote? Okay, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Okay, and then you want to speak to Connie Galley?
Well, I think, if the committee wants to take up that issue now, and you tell me that you want to take a vote on it tonight, and you're asking for my recommendation, I'll be glad to speak.
I think we should take it
I'll make a
tonight.
motion that we honor Connie Banco Galley with some, I don't know what we want to do, is it a plaque, is it? I'm not
Name
sure
the
what we're going to do, but I would
auditorium.
like to instruct the superintendent to work on naming the auditorium in honor of Mrs. Galley.
Okay? In
I
part
need
of
a
the
second.
procedure
I need a
that
second.
was recently approved.
That's the auditorium, naming the auditorium.
but I don't know,
I like
yeah,
that idea,
yeah.
naming
All
the
right.
auditorium.
Okay, so it says that the superintendent will make a recommendation
Right.
to the school committee in a timely manner. Well,
That's
5 minutes after the procedure was instituted, I think is a timely manner.
I do too.
I thought about Clemson University has a thing on their stadium that says, Clemson University welcomes you to Death Valley, population 100,000. We should do something like that. Shepherd Hill welcomes you, no. Because that is a place where show choirs often meet their fate, against ours. But anyway, and bands. Some of what I'm about to say is based on what I said at graduation last year when Connie was awarded. Here's what I've thought about it. I'll try to make this for my own sake as much as anybody. I thought about the whole thing about how there's a lot of people that have been worthy of some honor even since I've been superintendent, people that have passed away, people that have retired, people that are still active. And so I thought about this. If somebody were to come to me and say, well, you just named the auditorium after Connie Galley, I think you should name the science lab after me, or something like that, I would say, well, all you have to do then, to have that happen, is do what she did. Good luck. Because, seriously, I tell you humbly that this might just be the case where we should do this. I'll tell you a little bit about Connie. She joined the district in 1982 when I was in 7th grade. I added that myself. But like many successful people, Connie started by doing whatever it takes. She was the director of the junior high musical, the high school chorus, and she fulfilled, as oftentimes new teachers do, any musical responsibility that you have to do. You just say yes, But in the intervening 30-plus years, since 1982, she built, and I had a front row seat for some of it, brick by brick, arguably the finest music program in Massachusetts, maybe New England, one that's nationally recognized. But that, winning is one thing, but she did it with a certain way about her. A lot of poise, dignity, class, a true professional. She taught music to thousands of students, made thousands of students lifelong lovers of music, and set a great example for kids and grown-ups alike. And this is a great line, if I do say so myself. Right. Perhaps without even knowing, she showed us how to be an educator, a winner, and a public servant at the same time. Also important to note that most of the music teachers who've been hired in our district, to name a few, Becky Boussier and Dave McCouga, who are currently at Shepherd Hill, Cindy Snow and Kristen Potter at DMS, James Flynn at Charlton Middle, Julie, I believe, also at Mason Road and Dudley L, have either been students of Connie's, they've been her students, or they've been trained under Connie as student teachers or interns or whatever. Twice in my time at Dudley Middle School, now make that 3 times, I had an opening for a music teacher, and that was the first phone call I made was to Connie Galley to say, Connie, do you know anybody who would be great for this and who's in the pipeline, who you've worked with? And every single time, she gave some good recommendations, and we ended up hiring those people, and they've been outstanding. So that's important to note, too, that as they say in sports, the coaching tree has a lot of branches. Well, that impact, it can't be overlooked either. So if there was ever a time to invoke this procedure, I think that this is it. And while many Dudley-Charlton staff members have had positive and far-reaching impact, it's difficult for me, sitting here right now, to think of anyone who's had more than Connie. Therefore, for what it's worth, if I had a vote on this matter tonight, I'd vote yes, and I would hold my hand high, at least as high as my hand can go. I guess that's all I wanted to say. I really think this is the one.
Yeah,
I do too. I'd just like to add, I've been to a lot of those music programs throughout the years too. And the thing I like about Connie, she always is in the background. She's never up there. The kids just take
Right.
off. Even when they come to the Christmas show for us, she was never like there. She was just in the back because they're so well trained. They don't need her there to help them when they make the performance. She never wanted the high.
And she didn't
She never
want
wanted to
to,
be in the lights. She wanted to be
cause attention to
No, she was
herself.
always
She always
just there.
stayed
Yeah.
in the
And I would like
background.
to thank Mrs. Ryan for the letter that hit everything, all different facets of her career. And I think it hit the nail on the head. And that sentence that you wrote would be nice on the plaque. The one that you said
Oh,
was
the
a
winner
good
thing?
sentence.
Hey, I'm gonna
And
get.
Connie graduated from Bartlett High School, and I was teaching at the time. And
Well, so
I
you were
had
her
her as a
teacher.
student.
You taught her everything you know.
And her sister, her sister attended Bartlett High School. They graduated in Webster. And then Dudley inherited her. So, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Motion carries, it's unanimous. Elaine?
To follow through on the recognition of this honor, it would be nice if there was some type of ceremony attached to maybe the holiday show, which I think is probably the biggest performance that the show choir does, because there would be a lot of community participation at that point in time. It shouldn't, if we're going to make this honor, it shouldn't go, just put it up on the wall and,
Sure.
I think we should try and do something attached to that
Sounds good. Elaine.
performance.
Dedication of some sort, yeah.
Absolutely.
Mr. Sage has something.
Mr. Sage?
There may be a rare occasion in our future that our high school is rebuilt. Will that name follow to the new and improved auditorium?
It should.
Yeah, I would think so, yeah.
I would hope so.
Yes,
But sometimes that gets lost in translation.
sometimes, but it
I
should.
was hoping to get that into the motion.
Yeah. But, for instance, the playground in Dudley is named after Carmignani, and when they did the whole, they kept that playground near the police station because it was dedicated to someone. So,
Same with the field.
same with the
When we
field.
redid the field, yeah.
Right, the same with the field.